ready for takeoff.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tyler. I'm a software engineer with Wealthsimple Foundation. We're based out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And today I'm going to talk to you about a few different ways you can give back in the tech community. So I'll start out first by giving a little bit of a background about myself. I come from a family where there's always been a very strong emphasis on giving back to the community. So most notably, when I was young, we started this foundation that was meant to bridge the gap between post-secondary education and university for a bunch of at-risk students in like high school in the GTA area, Greater Toronto area in Toronto. And I continued to volunteer when I got to university as well, and expanded that to the Toronto community too. And I actually learned business in university, but when I changed into the tech industry, I want to know how I can leverage those skills as a software engineer to make a bigger impact in the community at large. So I compiled this list of different ways that some of them I've tried to give back using, and then some of them I definitely aspire to do. But this is by no means an exhaustive list. This is just a good way to give you like a starting, a place to start to like give back in the community when you get back home. So I break everything down by what I like to call the spectrum of giving back. And when I think about volunteering, the number one thing for me is I want to make sure that it's in a time commitment that I think is manageable. I don't want to overwhelm myself, and I'm very cognizant that that burnout is real when volunteering as well. So I break everything down by time commitment, with things that require a little bit less time commitment closer to the left side, and then things that require a little bit more closer to the right. And near the end of the presentation, I'm going to be talking to you about a very interesting situation I found myself in, where I'm actually volunteering full-time as part of a nonprofit organization. So let's get started. First and foremost, let's talk about being an accessibility advocate. So what exactly is accessibility? For those who don't know, it's just making an application usable by as many people as possible. And when a lot of people think about accessibility, their mind naturally goes to people with disabilities. But it doesn't always include them. It can go on to include people with technology restrictions as well, maybe very low internet connectivity, or people that only have access to a mobile device or a desktop computer. So it's making sure you're capturing all those people as well with your accessibility and your websites. And the cool thing about this is once you learn these accessibility design patterns, it's really a passive time commitment and can go on to save you time as well. I've noticed in some of my projects, a lot of the things that are the least accessible also happen to be the things that are the most complex. And oftentimes the simple solution is the more accessible solution as well. So when thinking about the impact of being an accessibility advocate, you're making the internet more usable for an entirely new segment of people. And it's important to note that 100% accessible is not really an attainable goal that you should strive for. It's a really sad fact that 97% of websites, 97% of the top 1 million websites aren't fully accessible. So anything you do, even if you're just making sure that any application you're working on has a mobile component to it as well, you're making a good first step to making sure that more people can use your application. So next, I'd like to talk about hosting a workshop. And I love workshops. I love going to workshops and also hosting them because it's a great way to learn a new topic that typically wouldn't be taught in a classroom setting. And the cool thing about hosting a workshop as well is you don't necessarily need any experience hosting a workshop, or your experience can specifically lie in that specific area that you're hosting the workshop in. So for example, when I first got into the tech industry, after I got my first job, I went back to my programming school and started teaching people about how you can ace an interview in the tech industry. Because I found a lot of times that I was going to interviews, I was doing it in the same way that you would typically do like a business interview. And I learned the hard way that it's actually quite different. So the time commitment involved with hosting a workshop is relatively low. It depends on how many workshops you intend on hosting, but typically there's a little bit of a ramp up period. Your first workshop you're hosting, you definitely have the nerves, and it's a lot of commitment to get it up to a place where you're comfortable with. But after that, it's a lot of maintenance on it. It's a lot of tweaking small things. So the time commitment definitely tempers off after that. But the impact of hosting a workshop is massive. You are essentially creating content that isn't typically found anywhere else, especially not in one cohesive manner. And you give people the opportunity to, come into a safe environment where they can ask questions, they can try things, they can fail different things, and then they can go home and also try those things as well. And next up, I'd like to talk about volunteering, which I like to put in two separate categories. The first of which is mentoring, which I'm sure a lot of us here have been mentored by a more senior developer, or writing code for nonprofits. And the reason I separate these are because they do vary significantly in time commitments. As a mentor and a mentee, I found that typically I'm meeting maybe once or twice a month. That could be anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour each session. But I'm typically leveraging my skills and my experience that I developed on the job to help guide another engineer along their path towards where they want to be in their career. But writing code for nonprofits, I've also had the opportunity to do this as well, and it really varies in the amount of the scope of work that you can do. It can range from you just doing some basic website maintenance type things to you being the entire development team in charge of project management and developing the application. So it can vary from anything from a couple hours a month to something that could go on to be something that you do outside of your 9 to 5 consistently on a daily basis. So what I like to think about for the impact is, as a mentor, it's awesome to be able to gain some leadership skills and help a young engineer develop on their path towards where they want to be in their career. As a mentee, it's been an awesome experience being mentored because I have a safe environment where I can ask some questions that aren't typically found online. For example, like if I want to figure out salary negotiation stuff, which varies by the city you're in, which varies by what level of the career, and which varies by the company you're participating in. But also you're able to expand your network as well. It's awesome to be in an industry and know that you have someone else you can trust that's also in the same position as you as well. And writing code for nonprofits, it's a really cool opportunity, mainly because if you're not writing code for a nonprofit, typically they're either not going to do it themselves, or they're going to find someone else to do it, which might involve using some valuable resources, which they can better spend helping people in the community. So it's really good to help out nonprofits. You're essentially expanding their online reach for a very low price on their end. And next, I could talk about teaching, which I've had the opportunity to do as well fairly early on in my career, and had a very, very interesting situation teaching. But it's essentially instructing in a more formal manner than a workshop. And you're typically relying on some content that is either created by yourself or you're following a curriculum that someone else has given you as well. And when I think about teaching, I also separate this into two unique, distinct paths. You can either teach in a more formal setting, like a classroom, or you can teach in like a less formal setting, like on an online learning platform or through YouTube. And the curriculum can range depending on what you want to teach. For example, you can teach the CS fundamentals, or you can teach the specifics of a programming language. So it's really up to you what you want to teach with this with your curriculum. But beyond that, there's the time commitment's relatively more on the higher side. Similar to that of a workshop, you have a significant time commitment for your first semester, but you do have the option to teach full-time or part-time. So I recommend for your first workshop, definitely, or first teaching engagement, I recommend leaning more towards that part-time commitment. And something else to note as well is that there's that implicit time commitment that no one really talks about with teaching, which is you need to have enough experience to be able to teach whatever you are teaching in the course. So a good example of this is like if you want to teach in like a public sector, you definitely need to have a teacher's license in a lot of states. But if you want to teach in the private sector, it's typically just experience, on-the-job experience that helps you teach any sort of topic. But the impact is awesome with teaching as well. You're connecting with a new generation of people that are learning a programming language. And also you're teaching digital literacy in an increasingly technologically reliant society. But I will note when I was teaching, I kind of started a little bit too early in my career, and there's a very steep learning curve that I didn't notice. I noticed that I thought I could leverage just my raw programming ability to be able to teach, but there's a lot of other skills that people don't talk about, like having to show empathy or listening skills or communication skills, which are all very important. So I eventually learned these skills and was able to be successful as a teacher, but there's definitely a very steep learning curve, which I would definitely consider if you want to get more into teaching. And next I'll talk about civic hacking. So I'll go a little bit higher level with this because civic hacking is essentially using publicly available information or maybe data provided by the government to help make your community a little bit better. It doesn't necessarily need to be anything online, but as an engineer, you have this unique skill set where you have this keen attention to detail, you're problem solving for your every day-to-day job, but also you're very comfortable working online. So what that means is you can go out in the community, you can see things that typically don't work as well as you want it to. You can devise and scope out a solution to some of these problems, and you're able to create something that can fix something that you see as wrong from the comfort of your own bedroom. And the time commitment for this, again, starts out relatively on the easy side, relatively easy to manage. But depending on how the scope increases for your civic hacking engagement, you can see that you might have to go more on the maintenance side, or you might have to start thinking about whether you want to provide more features in your product that will start to eat away at some of your time that you didn't account for. But the benefits of doing a civic hack are really quite significant. You're helping breaking down some of the barriers in the community. You're providing people with better access to information, and you're helping free up some of the government resources as well, so it can be better spent in other areas in the community. It's important to note, though, that like I mentioned, with the civic hack, you run the risk of maybe having to expand the reach a little bit, and you might start losing control of your application. I personally haven't participated in a civic hack, but I've used quite a bit of civic hacks in Toronto. I know one major one we have is the government released a bunch of data pertaining to when buses would arrive, and a lot of people created applications where you can track real time where buses are going, and it's actually way better than the application that our public transit released. So next I could talk about writing open source software, and this is by no means anywhere that I am comfortable writing code for, but it's essentially software that's distributed with its source code. And it's done in a way that they want people to iterate on it, to modify different things, and essentially learn from it and make it a little bit better. And some obvious examples of open source software are Ruby, which I'm sure a few of you have used, Rails, React, Firefox, and Linux are some really cool examples. And I would say the time commitment for writing open source software is very significant. Not only in terms of just writing the code, but you're also having to deal with a lot of the bureaucratic licensing process. You have to deal with making sure your application's pivoting in a way that you're comfortable with. So it's not necessarily all coding, it's also a lot of that management side as well. So if you're thinking about doing, writing some open source software and you're just looking to get started, definitely look to iterate on existing open source software to dip your toes in a little bit. But the impact really is amazing. I think we all appreciate people that write open source software. So if you do, please continue writing it. Because it would cost us a lot of money to be able to use some of the software that's just free and publicly available. And it helps solve some problems that our society has or that our application has in a way that is contributing to the distributed development process, which I love that. You can create an application and people can iterate on it and then it can solve a problem that you didn't originally intend for it to solve. But with that, if you write open source software, it might be a little bit daunting to lose a lot of that control. And you might run the risk of being in a long legal battle if someone were to take that software and try to use in a way that you didn't intend, to sell, but that's way down the line. I think the benefits of writing open source software more than outweigh the considerations here. So the last thing I'm going to talk about is working full-time for a nonprofit organization, which I do acknowledge is it's more unique to my experience, but I think it's kind of cool to share how I've kind of ended up in this situation. So I'll go on to explain what Wealthsimple is. Wealthsimple is essentially a fintech based out of Toronto, Canada. We have about 2.4 million clients across the country. And our main goal is to provide financial freedom to all, and that's independent of age, education background, net worth. And the way we do this is by offering a series of financial instruments that were typically most associated with those who were able to invest a lot of money, the wealthy essentially. And we've made this in a very simple way that anyone can pick up and use at any moment. And that involves tools like stock trading, ETFs, crypto, managed investing, along with a series of other applications as well. But one of the main problems that we've encountered with Wealthsimple is that in the path towards democratizing wealth, we've found ourselves in a very difficult situation because a lot of the systemic issues that have plagued North America in general, which is essentially that there's a lack of education around a lot of these financial instruments. So a lot of the people that actually need these products the most see investing as something that is unattainable, see trading as something that's difficult to understand and very risky. So the people that need these products the most and can benefit from it just aren't using it. So that's where my organization comes in. We're Wealthsimple Foundation. We're a non-for-profit organization that's partnered with and founded by the larger organization, which is Wealthsimple. And we're really going out to achieve that same goal of financial freedom for all. And the way we do this is by breaking down barriers and really, how do I put this? Encouraging people to pursue post-secondary education. And we do this through a series of different ways, but most notably, we offer bursaries. We provide a lot of tailored programming specifically centered around financial literacy because we noticed a lot of people just didn't know what compound interest was, didn't know what credit scores were. So it's hard to really teach about why it's important to invest when you don't know a lot of these basics of investing. But there's also, what we offer is an education savings platform for something called an RESP, which is it's an education savings investment account that's provided by the government that allows for you to do a few different things, and that includes tax breaks. So if you don't actually get taxed on any of the amounts that you're contributing to the account, but when you withdraw, you're taxed at that tax rate when you first start school. So it's typically at a lower tax rate, and you're able to save a lot of money that way. And the government also offers a lot of government grants as well, both the federal government and the provincial government through contribution matching. And also if you're in a low to modest income level, they provide a few grants as well for that too. So this organization really works because we have this interesting symbiotic relationship with our parent organization where we both mutually benefit off each other. Wealthsimple essentially gives us funding and human capital in the terms of people that volunteer with the organization and some of our outreach initiatives. But also we go back and in turn help Wealthsimple achieve their goal of financial freedom by essentially providing this investing platform for education that specifically targets this segment of the population that is historically underbanked. Essentially that's the way that we both help each other, and it really works out. But we're a little bit different from like what typically happens with most corporate give-back programs. Typically, when you think of a corporate give-back program, it's usually pledging a certain amount of money to an initiative that the organization cares about or an emissions target. But after that initial investment is made, there's really no involvement with whatever that initiative was. Versus what we do with the Wealthsimple Foundation, we're actively partnering with different members of the community and tailoring our content more to suit their needs. So we might go to a student organization and teach them about what a predatory credit card is, or go to an organization where, like a homeless organization, teach what credit scores are. And it really varies, and we really tailor a lot of our content to whoever we're dealing with. But one of the main issues that we encounter with Wealthsimple Foundation is that it's actually because of the name that we share with Wealthsimple. We're under a lot of scrutiny by the federal government and the federal tax agency, which essentially says that we cannot actually advertise Wealthsimple products in any of these outreach initiatives. And the main implication of this is that we have to keep this neutral opinion about whatever financial institution the people we're trying to help out are with, which means obviously our intention is not to get more people to use Wealthsimple, but we're losing a lot of revenue that could be reinvested back into the application, reinvested back into the community to provide better tooling, better, more tailored programming, and really expand our reach to other areas. So the way that we overcome this is by having this unique focus on engineering. So another thing that really separates Wealthsimple Foundation is that we have a team of dedicated engineers, which is a team that I'm actually on as well, that actively work on the product, but also volunteer for these outreach initiatives on a regular basis. And what this means essentially is that I'm creating this product, and I'm also working with people in the community as well and learning a little bit about the problems that they're facing, and learning a little bit more about how I can make this application a little bit better for them. And on top of that, it's really awesome to have this team of dedicated engineers because we're really working towards building out this awesome product. But I'll move on to the next slide. The main rewards of working for nonprofit arm. It's honestly amazing to think that in the past 2 years, we've helped 8.7 thousand students receive $5.4 million in funding. And a lot of this funding was actually just going completely unclaimed. And we've delivered about 2,000, we've delivered to 2,000 people financial literacy material. And that's been from everything like completely tailored original presentations each time. But from an engineering perspective, it's so interesting to think that like the code I write every day, I then get to go back into the community and see how they use this application or see the issues that they face, and I get to be that very important first step on their path to financial freedom. But on top of that, I get to work with a lot of very passionate individuals, not necessarily just the engineers or support staff that I work with, but getting to meet people in the community and hear their stories is definitely, it's really empowering. So I've given you a lot of material to really think about here, but if you're gonna do anything, my number one tip is like keep it really small and something that's very attainable as well. So I think for me, when I first got started, like it can be anything from like watching a YouTube video about how to make a website more accessible. It could be reaching out to an organization that you've always been interested in. It could be anything as simple as just scheduling 15 minutes in your calendar to like just brainstorm about different ways you can give back to the community. But whatever you choose, I hope this presentation really inspired you to use your skills as a software engineer to go really give back to the community. So thank you.